right, we're here for another EV Obsession show after a long weekend, thanks to Indigenous Peoples Day and
That's right.
Columbus Day.
Well, I always like Columbus Day. I got my buddy Alfredo here that I used to work with at Honda, and he's a Mexican dude. We used to always rip on each other. And it was somebody sent us a meme that said celebrate Columbus Day by going into someone's house and telling them you live there now. And he thought it was just great. He ran with it. He went into the sales manager's office and said, "That's it. I'm the sales manager now. Happy Columbus Day." Because of course we were working that day, and he actually ended up becoming the sales manager. So that was pretty funny.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say he got fired.
That would
Yeah.
be less fun. Actually, that'd be more funny. But
Yeah.
no, he's actually doing quite a good job running a dealership up in Barrington Honda store. He's doing a great job there. But
Yeah.
another company that's doing a great job is the Tesla Model Y has just surpassed 2 million global sales. That is absolutely bonkers.
Yeah. I mean, I have to thank a reader. He's kept us abreast of some of these milestones from Tesla for past several years, like when different models hit or Tesla overall hits 1 million or 2 million or something. And he shared this with us recently, and I just I have my own data. I do quarterly reports on all this stuff, so I went in and I was like, oh, he's right. Look at that. It's in the third quarter, the Model Y got to 2.16 million cumulative sales, and I think for me, what's most interesting is that the Model 3 is at 2.2 million right now. So in this quarter, the Model Y is going to pass the Model 3 as the best-selling electric vehicle in history.
Yeah.
And there's no looking back from there. I mean, who's catching it after that?
No, and it's interesting because I think the only vehicle that we've seen so far that really has a chance at all for catching the Model Y is either the F-150 Lightning, which I think Ford kind of screwed up that launch, or the Mach E Mustang. And I think for similar reasons, Ford kind of screwed up that launch as well. So the two best, potentially the two biggest challengers that the Model Y has faced so far, it has just completely smacked into the ground.
Yeah, they have nothing comparable in sales, but you can also see in the charts like just the Model 3's rise. This is the same scale, so you can see that it's cumulative sales. It's a little bit deceiving because of how like it looks like more, but
Well, you have the
it's
Y axis is a
but you
little
see
bit.
how the cumulative sales from 2018 up to now is like that, and then the Model Y is just like an exponential, really ridiculously rapid sales curve. So the Model Y just selling like crazy since its launch. This is their combined chart, and open that bigger maybe, uh, and
Yeah, it's
you
just so
see it
much faster.
combined they've gotten to almost 4.5 million sales, which is wild.
Yeah, and I think this speaks to the Model Y being the right package. It's the right size, it's the right price, it's got the
Yeah.
right incentives, it's got the right technology. It just seems to be kind of the car of the moment, right? Where everywhere you go, that's where you want to be. You want to be in that crossover segment, that 5 passenger crossover, sort of mid size seems to be the hottest segment in the industry. They've got the best, most reliable charging infrastructure. They've got the easiest buying experience. They're all over the place, and frankly, they're probably one of the most affordable options you can go out and buy right now. It's tough to argue against the Model Y, especially now that the bumpers seem to be staying on better.
Yeah, I think you can also see down there that ride sharing. It's a good ride sharing vehicle. It's got much more space in the back. It's still not the best backseat in the world, but it's better for ride sharing than the Model 3 was. And yeah, I mean, I still just think too, it's the design, this smooth, sleek design is really nice for a crossover. I'm not a big fan of the bulky crossover look, the kind of boxy look, which I know some people prefer because it looks bigger to them. But the Model Y just still has like a sporty, fun, and it drives still really much more like a really fun car than a lot of crossovers. So from my perspective, it's just the whole package, from driving to
Yeah.
styling to range, and then the cost. It's really been it's affordable for a lot of people. It's one of the most affordable crossovers you can buy across the board. Don't whatever the powertrain. But that's the
Exactly.
Model Y. I mean, that's just we can talk all day about it, but
I do want to throw out there, who do you think is the automaker that's most likely to be the next one to hit 2 million of a model?
2 million of a model. Oh, that's a good question,
Because
huh?
I look at like
Because
the BZ 4x, I look at the Mustang Mach E, I even look at this, like, the new
well,
Chevy Blazer coming out, and I don't see any of those getting to this
yeah,
level.
I mean, I'm gonna rely on the next story. I'll answer your question after I look at these charts more closely.
Yeah,
Uh,
what does BYD have?
and I feel like you might also be like curious to which US model would be most likely to be next, not from Tesla, of course.
Right, but that's a good point, that there are models out there in the world that could get to that number, right? They're just not
Yeah.
necessarily American cars.
Yeah, I mean, we've got, so this new World EV Sales Report from Jose Pontes, 18% of new car sales across the world were plug-in vehicles. In August, 13% were full electrics, so well above the US of like 7 to 9% or something. And this really is, as he says, it's hitting disruption zone, electric
Right.
disruption zone, which he explained this time, because people are like, what is that? You make something up. And actually, I don't know who. That's what I assume, because he's responding to them, but I haven't seen the comments like that triggered this. But he said, it's basically when you're at that steepest part of the tech adoption S curve, where you're going from like 10 to 20% to 80 to 90%. That's that steep part. And so we're like in the middle of that now. We're in that curve, according to Jose, which I agree. And yeah, so again, full electrics were 71% of plug-in registrations in August. So full electrics are really dominating now in the plug-in market. And yeah, you see the leaders in August, of course, the Model Y. I mean, this is just like, this is why you can't answer that question. Look at the Model Y. I mean, you can't, or this is why you can't imagine like who would ever catch it,
Yeah.
because right now it's so far ahead of every other model. I mean, the only thing that comes to mind is a cheaper Tesla to me, because that has potential to, or but it's just so far off. And I don't really believe in the robotaxi thing at this point, because I don't think Tesla's done well on it. So I think it's not going to count on a robotaxi design or something. I think it's just going to be like traditional cars, and which one is the best value for money, which is the biggest seller, and it's going to be the Model Y for as long as I can imagine. And then you've got the BYD Song, which is a split of full electric and plug-in hybrids, selling a lot more plug-in hybrids right now. The Model 3 again, the BYD Chin, same as the Song, split. Then you've got the full electric BYDs, the BYD Seagull, the BYD Yuan Plus / Atto 3, the BYD Dolphin. I mean, I could see BYD potentially just penetrating every market with a really mass market EV, and I imagine that's the next 2 million vehicle.
Yeah,
Full
it's going to be
electric
something
vehicle.
from China, whether it's the BYD Atto or something like that.
Yeah. The only thing with
The Atto
BYD is
3
they
has the
split
right
their
look.
sales a lot more. See, they have a lot more models, so they split their sales a lot more than Tesla does, right? Across different models.
Yeah, that's fair. I look at Tesla, what Tesla's doing, to be very similar to what Volkswagen did in the 40s and 50s, where they really just had the Beetle, and then which was the Type 1 more accurately. Then they had like the Type 2, which was the bus, which was essentially the same with a different body. Then they had the Type 3, which was the notchback and the squareback, which was essentially the same mechanically with a different body. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that at Tesla. They're going to have to come up with something. They're going to have something to sell Model Y owners after the
Yeah.
second or third one. Um,
Or
but
even after,
maybe,
even to get them out of the first one. I mean,
right?
because you can drive one for a long time, and this is something that we praise as a benefit of electric cars, but it could make selling a new EV to people a lot harder.
Well, I think especially in America, you have a culture of newness, right? Where you have to have the hot new thing. And, we talked about this with the Tesla Model 3 Highland. Is it different enough? It's probably different enough for the Tesla fans to say, oh, cool, I want to check out the new one, the same way that an iPhone 15 is different enough from an iPhone 13 to make the Apple fans get all excited about it, right? But I think to continue getting conquest buyers, to get people to say, yeah, I'd rather buy this, I'll buy this one instead of one that's 2 years old, or, a CPO with an extended warranty. I don't know. I think it's going to, I think it still has a lot of life left in it. I think there's still a lot of first time EV buyers who the Model Y will speak to. But I think by the time you've had your second one and now you're looking at your third one, your lease is up, and, you're ready to buy again. I don't know. I
I
have a hard time stomaching,
I
a
imagine
fourth XC90.
yeah, I imagine the answer. What's the average length of ownership for new car buyers? How
It's
long?
been going up. It's been going up significantly or consistently since the 90s. When I first got started in the business in 97, 98, and I was working at a Dodge store that and later moved over to the Mercedes store, we were talking about the average length of ownership was just over 2 years. That someone who bought a new car, would basically finance it, take out a 4 year or a 5 year loan. At that point, 5 year loan was pretty much as long as anybody would go. And they would get about halfway through it and then get a new one. And we were trained how to like target these people and say, yeah, cars are changing. The look is changing very quickly.
Mhm.
And, turn them into lease buyers. And we were talking about 24 and 36-month leases. And if you remember that late 90s, early 2000s, there was a huge shift in the way cars looked, especially if you were at a Chrysler or a Mercedes store. It was a massive difference from the W124 Mercedes Benz of the 80s and 90s into that
Yeah.
that 211 that had, or I'm sorry, that W210 that had the four headlight look and the much more round aerodynamic look. And people were really jumping at that, and they didn't want what looked like visually an old car anymore. I mean, even Volvo got involved in that. They went from their very boxy styling of the 940 and the 850 into the S90 and S70 later, and eventually the XC90. But it was a time of very rapid visual change, and you're seeing kind of the opposite of that with Tesla, with like 4 and 8 year model cycles. So I don't know
Yeah,
how it's going to go. I don't know how it's going to change, but we'll see.
I remember that period well. I wasn't a new car buyer. I was in high school in the 90s, but I remember that going from boxy to smooth and rounded, and just how dramatically the cars looked,
Yeah.
different, the new models looked, and how it was like, oh, you got to have it. Oh, the new models look way better. Like, oh, look at
Well,
that.
because
That's
it
way
just
nice.
looked so
So
different.
different.
It was a
Yeah.
different vibe. Where I think now we've gotten to a place of refinement versus revolution in terms of automotive styling for the most part,
Yeah.
including at Tesla.
And I
And
think for
someone will change that.
aerodynamics as well as styling, right? How much is that? How much of like, because I've thought about that several times. Why doesn't it change as much anymore? And I figure like probably because they're maximizing aerodynamics and efficiency.
Yeah, and I think that's fairly accurate. If you look at some of it is that, some of it is styling, some of it is regulations. The regulations haven't changed very much. Um, there's
So
a
with
combination of
styling,
factors.
you think automakers just like, this is what people like, so we don't want to be too risky. Is that what you why
No,
do
I
you
don't
think?
think it's quite that. I think it's a question of, you're when you're a legacy car maker, you're trying to preserve your market share,
Right.
and you're talking about growing it 1 to 5%. So a real radical change is probably not going to come from them. And keep in mind what Tesla originally did with the Model S and Model 3 and Model Y. They're
Yeah.
trying to deliver a mainstream experience that happens to be electric. They called it the Model S because they were targeting the Mercedes S class. They were not being subtle about this. And what they delivered was a big sedan, even, with the nose cone that had a very conventional look. It looked really good. It was a really good looking luxury sedan, but it wasn't like something wild and crazy. BMW did the wild and crazy route with the
Yeah.
i3 and the i8, and it did not work for them. Aptera is doing the wild and crazy route, sort of the same way that Paul Elio did, and maybe someone will eventually get one.
Yeah, but it is fascinating, I think, and I really, it's a fascinating part of like why people maybe hold on to cars longer, which is a good thing, I think.
Oh yeah, I
But
think if we all sort of collectively as a society decided we're going to keep cars for 250,000 miles, it would be a much better scenario. Now, we wouldn't sell as many cars.
and
That might be
what do you?
bad for the economy, but I think what you'll find, the longer you look into the clean tech space and the longer you look at environmentalism and sustainability, what's good for the planet is often bad for the economy. And
Yeah.
money is
Well,
imaginary anyway. So
I don't think you said what's the average now for new car owners. How long do they?
for
Do you know?
new car buyers, it's about 4 to 4.5 years.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a big shift, and you know, I
Most
just,
people who buy new do not pay off their vehicle.
I mean, I can see, like, I'm tempted right now. My car's over 4 years old, and I'm like tempted. Oh, I could trade in and get a Model Y, or trade in. Yeah, I mean, that's what I would get, or get another EV, non Tesla, and it's a little tempting because there's some things that just annoy you over time, or you like just want something new and fresh. But at the same time, I'm like, it almost feels the same as it did when I bought it. Like the car hardly looks like it's aged, and it's hard. I mean, unless you get into like cleaning day and you're like, oh, I can never get this area, and it just gets more and more filth builds up here because I can't clean this
Yeah,
area
but
of the.
then that's when you get a professional detailer and it
Yeah, well,
comes
I'm
out
on the
looking
verge of
good as new.
that. Because but really it's like overall the car is good. It's not, it doesn't feel like it's 4 years old, doesn't look like it's 4 years old. And I imagine there's a lot of Tesla buyers who will hold on to them for longer because they'll be like, I love this car, it's still working fine.
Yeah.
The Highland looks like an improvement, but it's not a big difference.
Well, I think the
The
early
model,
Tesla buyer was not a conventional new car buyer. Just
yeah,
anecdotally, and I'm not
no,
talking about any kind of scientific data, but anecdotally,
for sure.
most of the people I know who had Tesla Model 3s and Model S's, they were not people who traditionally bought new cars.
Well, we had the whole Tesla stretch where it was a phrase coined by somebody, one analyst, I think, and we wrote about a lot, where people were buying Teslas, spending way more money on a car, buying their first new car, being a Tesla than they ever would have considered before.
Right.
And those people, like, I mean, I would say I'm one of them. Uh, yeah, I'm one of
Yeah,
them.
because you're not buying a Mercedes or anything.
I never bought new car before. I barely had any cars before because I lived car free for 15 years, and I never really thought, oh, I'm going to spend this much, gonna get a new car and spend this much money, and I don't know. I think there's a lot of those people who are like, I'm going to keep it for 10 plus years. I'm going to see, keep it as long as it's great. Then a lot of us will also get tempted to be like, oh, now that I have the taste of a new car, I want another one. But at the same time, so that's the early phase of buyers, which, but now we're in like a mass market phase. And I think the question that you're bringing up sort of with the phase of buyers at the moment is like 3 years down the road, are they going to want another Tesla Model Y or Model 3, or are they going to want to try something new, right?
Yeah, and I think what you're seeing is a lot of maybe first time buyers getting into the Model 3. They're getting out of the Model 3 and into the Model Y. And as Model 3 sales continue to grow in Europe and in China and in other markets where sedans are still popular, I think Model 3 sales are actually
Going to drop. Yeah.
they're up, but they're not up like the
No, no.
Y.
I think they're going to drop. I mean, I think.
Yeah, they're going to become a smaller and smaller percentage of that.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so that's the
That's that.
August numbers. Just interesting take on where we're headed with that. Oh, so we'll look at it here with the year to date, the January through August numbers. The first Western brand is the Volkswagen ID4. If you look at the August chart, the Model Y had almost 10 times as many sales as the Volkswagen ID4.
Yeah.
which was 11th as the first Western brand, and first almost non-BYD, non-Tesla almost. If you go to the, first 8 months, you have that mini Wuling Hongguang mini EV we've talked about, which is super cheap, like $5,000. And I guess that's a joint venture with GM, but then you have, a couple of GACs and otherwise the same, so really like the ID4 120,000 versus 772,000 for the Model Y. It's just such a big difference. But then if you think about it, Volkswagen Group is selling the ID4, a bunch of e-trons in this segment, a bunch of the Skoda Enyaq in this segment, a bunch of vehicles in this segment under different brands and different styling. So it's also just a different approach to sales. And whether I thought you were going to say earlier that the Tesla approach reminds you of the Ford Model T, which it's just like you can have any Tesla you want as long as it looks exactly as long as it's this
well,
one.
that's true. And then
But
Ford had some troublesome right-wing leanings and questionable socio-political angles as well, right? He was trying to like build that weird puritanical. Well, so this is actually a really good point, because Henry Ford tried to build that weird puritanical Christian settlement in Brazil. You don't know about this?
Puritanical Christian settlement?
So Henry Ford tried to build a factory town in Brazil because his thinking was that he'd get a lot more work out of the Brazilians if they had a good Protestant work ethic.
Oh, wow.
And it was like Ford Brasilia. It was a whole town. They didn't allow alcohol. They didn't allow parties at night. They had strict curfews. It was like part of this whole Ford vertical integration strategy. And like, it was really troublesome. Like, they don't talk about it a lot at the Henry Ford Museum.
Yeah, well, I know he was I know he had some anti-Jew and kind of Nazi.
Yeah, Henry Ford did too.
Yeah. No, yes. No, I see what you did there. Yeah, so
I see what you did there, you.
But yeah, I mean, it's just I mean, it's a different approach. Like, you have two choices: a crossover sedan, and if you want a Tesla, if you're a Volkswagen Group fan, you've got like a million choices.
And in fairness, I can't tell a Model T from a Model A any more than I can tell a Model Y from a Model 3. So
yeah, there's a lot of people cannot tell the difference between any of the Teslas. They look that similar.
Yeah.
Even some car people. Wink, wink.
Winky, winky.
So
is a Tesla a car or is a Tesla an appliance?
And then I saw down here, your Hyundai Ioniq 5 is 19. Impressive that it made the list among all these Chinese models. And the Volvo XC40 is right there above it. So look at that.
Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense.
Joe knows what's popular in the EV world. So we'll just quickly look at brands. So this is plug-in vehicle sales. So this includes plug-in hybrids. BYD is far ahead. Tesla is...
Gosh, Toyota really screwed this up.
Tesla is second by far. Toyota really screwed. Toyota's 16th.
Toyota had...
Oh my gosh.
They had the world by the stones in like 2008, 2009.
Toyota's below NIO.
I mean, South Park even made a whole episode about the Prius because everyone was buying a Prius. They were everywhere. My wife had one, and like her mother had one too. I think we had like 3 Priuses in the family, and like nothing.
No, they really screwed up. They could
be
up there with BYD and Tesla, but they are not. And then you've got GAC. Aeon is third. I think it just rose up there. Volkswagen is fourth. Maybe that one just... Yeah, I have to read the article again. BYD is fifth. So BMW, I mean. So Germany brand, but it's just when you look at the chart, the gap is so big between 2 and 3, and also between 1 and 2 on plug-in sales. BYD
I think the biggest difference when you look at China, when you look at Europe, is, and I'm not trying to say that they are more politically aligned with one another than we are here in America. I don't think that's the case at all. But I think that they don't celebrate ignorance and stupidity the way that we do here in America, which is like, I mean, you've got these idiots who are, with the rolling coal and the diesel and everything else. They're like, I'll never drive electric. That's got no soul. It ain't a real car. I got to make vroom vroom noises so everyone knows I'm daddy's special boy. Like, come on.
You do not want to see this video from my county commission meeting recently. I will send it to you. It's going to be depressing, hilarious and depressing. Really bad. So also here
I've
on
said
the,
it before and I'll say it again. Democracy just doesn't work.
oh, I thought you were going to say something about Florida. Uh,
No,
so
because these people vote.
I mean, they're running the commission, the county.
Yeah, the
They're running the
crazier
county. The
have.
bonkers conspiracy theories
Oh,
they are latched onto with all the access you can imagine for figuring out the truth. I mean, it's crazy. But yeah, so Volvo also is number 11 on the auto brands January through August. I think that's impressive. I mean, really, I
yeah.
think it's really impressive, and I expect they're going to keep. I expect they could rise, especially if they're really if they can find more and more people who just decide they want a Volvo when they get their first electric
Oh, I don't
car.
think that's it at all. I think Volvo is capitalizing on the Teslas. I think you've got one or two Model Ys. You're looking for something different. Try a Polestar. You got
Yeah,
a
I mean,
or an XC40 or a C40.
but either way, they have a lot of potential there. And then if you get down to auto groups for plug-in vehicle sales, here's that. There's top 5, but we'll switch goes right to the full electric. So this is the
Yeah, it's brutal.
full electric. Tesla is clearly in the lead here, but BYD is not that far behind. So they're 300,000 behind. I mean, it's not close, but it's. But then you get the gap to Volkswagen Group
It's massive.
is more than about 450,000. But still, I mean, you got a little more going on here than we used to have. So it's and Tesla just out there with 1.2 million is bonkers, right? But it's great. That's why we have them. So
Yep.
we have a quick
Next.
thing on Germany. Plug-in vehicles take 21% of new car market in Germany. Full electrics 14%. We've been covering these now regularly, these different market. So I don't know if there's much to highlight here beyond what we've said before. You can see that in September, the Opel Corsa E, the Fiat 500e, these kind of smaller European EVs are doing well. The Opel Mokka is a fun car.
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing to add
And
to
then a
that.
lot of German ones. And you've got the Hyundais and Kias in there. So this is kind of just what you see across the European markets, more or less. Now, get to another discussion topic. GM has made some concessions with striking UAW members to get past the strike we've been seeing. One thing is that they've agreed to let battery factory workers, that's what I found. That's the only thing I could really, battery factory workers be UAW members. So
Right.
I guess like before you had to work at an auto factory or a parts supplier or something, auto parts supply.
Yeah, like a tier
And
one
battery
supplier.
factory
Yeah.
workers were not included in that. And so GM has given in. I don't really understand how that works. Like I'm confused by it, to be frank. Like, why can't they just join whatever union they want? But I guess there's some kind of
Well, they can, right? So let's talk about that. So union workers at any supply company can vote. Workers at any company, whether it's a Starbucks, a Walmart, Tesla, you can decide that you are going to unionize. You do not have to be a member of another recognized union. You can start a brand new union and just be, we're the union. We have unionized and we're going to bargain collectively. That is your right as an American. That is your right as a human being. You can definitely do that. You can strike, you can collectively bargain, all those great things. What this is about is that the UAW in particular wanted to not only staff and hire, but actively recruit within the new battery plants. And they were being told no. Now, I don't know that that's
because they're joint ventures and they're
yeah,
the
I mean, just
battery is
people
not
don't want to.
auto.
Well, right. And a lot of these manufacturers, quite frankly, they don't want to deal with union employers because they know that it's easier to exploit and pay lower amounts and take advantage of people who are non unionized.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I don't know if it'll come to much.
And the reporting was that UAW told GM that they were going to strike at its factory in Arlington, Texas, where GM manufactures its most profitable vehicles, light duty pickup trucks and SUVs. And that's when GM gave in and said, okay, fine, you can unionize at these joint venture battery factories. That's how I understand it. It's interesting, very, yeah, bit inside baseball here, but that's the deal. There was one really fascinating thing in the article to me, which I'd been wondering about, but I had never seen this before. Erica Fuchs, a labor researcher at Carnegie Mellon, said that making the powertrain of electric vehicles, the batteries, electric motors, and power management systems requires more total labor, not less, than making engines and transmissions. And we've always, been told or assumed, electric cars require less labor because fewer parts, but it's not that simple, right? So that's interesting that there still should be theoretically as many jobs or more because of all these other components that require a lot of manpower. Yep, good.
I don't think that's right. I
So we have to get Erica Fuchs on a on a podcast to discuss this.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be willing to have that conversation, because let's just say that I am not convinced. I think that if you look at things from an additive,
researchers at the Boston Consulting Group reached a similar conclusion.
Well, no, they found that it requires less labor than making a gasoline power truck.
Slightly less, only
slightly less. Yeah, that does not ring true. And I'll just point to Tesla again, having the highest margins in the industry despite undercutting everybody else on price. It just doesn't make a whole ton of sense.
But I mean, they're talking about making the batteries too, so making all the parts of the batteries, the cathodes, the anodes, the battery cells, the battery packs.
I suspect, and I have done absolutely zero research on this, so feel free to just blast me into the stratosphere. I suspect that they are taking manufacturing numbers as a baseline of traditional internal combustion vehicles, removing the labor associated with the engine and transmission, and adding in some number for the battery and electric motors. And what they're not really considering is that there's a tremendous amount of ancillary work, fuel pumps, cooling, radiators.
That would be bad methodology. I don't assume they're doing that, but I
assume that the only way you can get to that conclusion is with bad methodology.
No, I think it seems possible. There's a lot of components in there that require a lot of human labor. As we know, Tesla tried to automate a lot and didn't do well with that and had to put a lot more people back on the line. But yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see like the details of the report. So we'll have to dig that up for another discussion and see what comes out of it.
But also, I just want to give.
I think it's not like, oh, there's no workers when there's EVs. Like I think that's a long gone myth. I think, of course, everything can get automated more in the coming years. We'll see, but right now, you still need a lot of people to build an EV.
Yeah, I just want to do high five to this guy for wearing an "Eat the Rich" T-shirt on TV. Good for you, dude.
Yeah, I wish it was showing. I was like,
I'm telling you, man, we one billionaire on national TV. The rest of them are gonna calm way down.
We better move on. It was getting feisty. So the Ford Mustang Mach-E, this looks very similar to the one I got to test drive for a week when there were only 4 in the US, and now there's just a handful in Australia. And David Waterworth got to test drive this one, although they're very limited what they're allowed to do on those test drives for some reason. So they're not allowed to really test it out as far as performance wise. But Ford Mustang Mach-E is arriving in Australia now. We were just talking last week about Australia hitting 10% EV market share. All the automakers are maybe starting to wake up that this market is ready for EVs. And the Mustang Mach-E, which you were saying is, one of the potential mass sellers, one of the potential top sellers in the world, is now entering the Australian market. I just love to see it, spreading and Australia getting more models, but the Mach-E getting more places where it can get the love that it deserves. I still think it's one of the best electric crossovers on the market.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I don't actually know why this isn't doing as well as it could be. I suspect it has a lot to do with the fact that you can't close the sunroof and the screen in the middle of the car is just ridiculously cartoonishly large. But yeah, this has all the makings of a winner. I think it got on everybody's radar and it made national news and got all kinds of huge attention because of the Mustang name being associated with it. Um, and I think if they had just called it a Mach E, it would have ramped up much more slowly, but it might have had more staying power. I think that there's a mindset of like, well, it's a Mustang, it's a sporty car, it probably doesn't have enough room for a Costco run. It's not a great car for kids and all that. And if they had just called it the Mach E or something, it might be doing a little bit differently. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I know
I
they
would
had
have thought the Mustang name was a real boost to it, but yeah, who knows?
well, they had limited production for a while, and then the markups on it were crazy. So you were getting all these stories about these ridiculous markups on Mach-E's, and then they finally got production going, and I don't think there's that much awareness that they have more supply and lower prices, and you don't have to fight a dealer for on a $10,000 markup anymore. Like, I think that's part of it.
I mean,
I think
depending
also
on where
people
you
just
go,
there's just word of mouth sales on the Model Y, and kind of the supercharger network and different things with the Model Y, lower price for um
yeah.
similar package. You could say better package with the Model Y,
But
but
let's talk about
that's
this because I
arguable.
think the dealers are really their own enemy here. If you go to a Jeep store and see Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, Ram, so CJDR store here in Chicago, you go down to Sherman Dodge, you go down here to Hawk CJDR. They've got inventory, aged inventory that's been on the lot 180, 220 days, and they're still putting markups on it, $3,500 market adjustment price, things like that. And their justification for it is that they're still selling vehicles.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
I I
I think
don't
so.
believe.
Yeah, I would put it on not being enough production. I
Yeah,
think not enough
maybe.
production, not enough faith in it. And if they were producing a lot more and sending them out to dealers a lot more, dealers would be marking them down, and they would be competing with Tesla on price.
Yeah,
But
but there's
right
such a
now they're not.
weird double standard with EVs on the dealership floor. If you go to it, like I'm on all these dealer calls all week long, it gets frustrating. I haven't been to the last 2 weeks just because it's so frustrating to deal with the stupidity of it. If they have an EV on the lot for 60 days, they go, oh, there's no demand for EVs. But if they have 150 Ford F-150s on the lot for 30, 40, 60 days, that's just business as usual. Nobody comes in and goes,
Yeah.
oh, there's no demand for V8 trucks anymore. That's nonsense. This is part of having a healthy inventory in the market, is to
Yeah.
have inventory for sale, especially if your entire business model is how can we make a deal today?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
no, I agree. And
it's just kind of
I just think
nonsense.
if they were producing a lot more, they had faith in it,
Yeah.
dealers would get a lot more, and they'd be like, okay, we have to move them,
Yeah.
and they would be competitive. And I just think they're a little bit, and it's a case of, small margins sometimes. Like, they're not uncompetitive, but they're not as competitive as they could and should be. And if they were a little bit more competitive, they could really be getting a lot more of those Model Y buyers.
Yeah.
I mean, I just fundamentally,
And
I
the
cannot
screen is really
believe
stupid.
that a lot of those Model Y buyers wouldn't consider a Mach-E if they were a lot more on the dealer lots and the price uh, negotiations
Yeah.
were better.
Well, let's
But
talk about this for a second because and I know you want to move on to the next thing, but I'm driving the Mazda CX-90 plug-in hybrid this week, and it is not radically visually stunning. It is not super exciting, but its interior is very car-like and has a on top of the dash. It has like the Apple CarPlay infotainment, and universally the people, and I've had a couple of different people in it just because we had a busy weekend. We did some stuff for the soccer league, we went to the Chicago Fire game, we did some camping stuff. So there's been a lot of like neighbors and friends in the vehicle that usually doesn't happen. It's usually just me and the wife, and everybody says, wow, this is a really nice looking car. This feels like a regular car that I could drive. Oh, cool, it's electric, because to normal people a hybrid is an electric car. They're like, oh wow, this is really neat. Almost everybody who sees that Mach E goes, "Oh wow, that screen's really big." And I think it was a Ford attempt to like out Tesla. Like, oh, they've got a 11-inch screen. We're going to put a 15-inch screen in here. It's just big and stupid. And I don't think it's going to age
I
well.
like the screen. I think I
Yeah,
think
but
it's
you're like a Tesla guy who looks at a Tesla and goes, amazing. What if they could get rid of 2 more buttons? That would be phenomenal. They could do
yeah.
everything
I
with a
mean,
touch screen and a psychic
I'm
neural
just
link.
really annoyed by small screens that are hard to reach and use and stuff. And I don't know. I mean, we're all used to smartphones and tablets and stuff now. So to me, like a big screen is I mean, a big tablet, a big phone sells for more than a small one. Like it's just
Yeah,
basic,
that's true.
you want bigger with better visibility and easier use. So I don't know. I mean, I think the picture makes it look ridiculous, but I think in the vehicle people have liked it, and of course like the volume knob, and I do like that. I like having the volume knob. But yeah, let's move on. We can talk very briefly about something that just irks me. So Fritz did another update on his full self-driving adventures with his Tesla Model 3 full self-driving beta, and talked about known unknowns, or unknown unknowns, I should say. What you didn't know about Tesla's full self-driving. So he's got one on the high-low beams, which is very similar to the windshield wiper one. I'm not familiar with the high-low beams one because I don't use it at night really, and I don't deal with that. But the white windshield wiper thing has been driving me nuts. I don't use full self-driving a lot because I only use it if I'm the only one in the car and there's no cars around me, because it's done way too many things to use it around other cars. So I've been using it, and it keeps putting on the windshield wipers automatically when there's no rain. And the frustrating thing, which Fritz points out with the high-low beams and the windshield wipers, is if you have full self-driving activated, you have to have automatic windshield wipers activated. And it's just bong. I did it today. I was using it a little bit on one road, then I deactivated it to avoid some pothole and make it turn, and then I activated it on another road, and the windshield wipers went like crazy on like level 3, like with no rain. And I was like, what the heck, man? So then I turn it off. And I've had this problem for a while, where when I'm backing into my garage, the windshield wipers would turn on if I have automatic wipers on. So I stopped using them. So I'm back into the garage after, a couple minutes after deactivating full self-driving to get rid of that windshield wiper issue. And somehow I had left it had I don't know, the automatic wipers had come back on or had stayed on somehow, but when I canceled full self-driving, they stopped doing that. So I thought they were off, but I'm back into the garage and they start wiping the windshield again like they do. And I'm just like, this is so ridiculously bad. This is so bad. And
Yeah.
I think they've
Somewhere
started
there's an
using the neural
engineer.
nets.
Yeah.
I think a recent update, which I just had one, is using the neural nets more for the windshield wipers, but it's just so bad that I can't have any faith in what they're doing when this is the kind of thing that's happening. And I tried to auto park the first time in ages the other day on a parallel parking, a big opening. There was a Fiat 500 in front of me, big space on my residential road, and my car ended up diagonal in the street and like abandoned it because it couldn't parallel park the car. And I was like,
Wow.
this is horrible. Like, I'm sorry.
But that's
I
old
I know
technology. Like,
Tesla is doing some stuff that others are not doing, and they have some advancements in this field, obviously, but they're still so far from doing any of these things well. So I just do not believe in their approach when they can't get these basic things to work for years, including just automatic windshield wipers, which have gotten drastically worse than they were 4 years ago. And auto parking, I think, has probably gotten worse based on my one use. But that's my rant. Fritz, it does it much more polite. He's in love with full self-driving. He absolutely loves it, uses it everywhere all the time, as much as he can, basically. He
I
also
mean, but he's
mentions,
also in his 80s. I think if you want to go with cultural stereotypes, FSD probably is a better driver than him.
I mean, he's really excited about. I don't think he's ever had like an accident or something, but I don't know. But he's just really excited about the new technology. So
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Well,
why
it keeps you young,
that's why
like
he's
you're,
right. Yeah, that's why
yeah.
he's keeps him young, and that's why he's so into this stuff at the age of 80s. That kind of passion and excitement. But But yeah, it's just bonkers to me how bad that is, and that is forced on you when you activate full self-driving. And I'm like, how is anyone thinking this is working well? And especially like, is it doing this in California where it doesn't rain ever? Like, I don't understand how, I mean, other people are not having this problem and thinking, oh, I can drive for an hour on full self-driving. I don't know,
All
but
right,
it's
I have
just,
something for this, but I don't know if you're gonna like it.
I mean, go for it. This is a
All right,
pretty
you know the
pretty safe.
Nigerian prince scam where they send you, they say, "Oh, I'm a
Yeah, yeah,
Nigerian
yeah,
prince. I have
yeah.
$28 million," and they have like really bad grammar and spelling, and
They do
you
that
would
on
think to your
purpose.
they do it on purpose.
Yeah.
Exactly. They create a low pass filter, right? So like you have to be like a special kind of gullible and kind of ridiculous to say, oh, well, this makes perfect sense, right? Like, of course he has bad English grammar. He's Nigerian, right? Like there's some kind of weird mental click that goes on there. And I think full self-driving, by pricing itself as high as it does, creates a low pass filter. You don't want the average person isn't going to spend that kind of money and then admit to everyone around them that it's trash.
Yep, yep. And
But
you
if
want
you
to
could just,
justify, you
I
don't
think,
want to,
justify
you
the
want to
expense,
justify your purchase.
right?
There's
And
also, I mean, I would frankly say as well, I would bet the number of people with full self-driving, the percentage of them who are Tesla shareholders is very high.
100%.
They're like, yeah, I'm close to 100%.
Yeah, it's 100%. It's 100%.
Yeah.
So I think that you combine these two things, right? You combine this idea of like, you know, it's easy to fool someone. It's almost impossible to get them to admit that they've been fooled.
Yeah.
Like you have some of that in play here where people don't want to be seen as like, oh, I'm a sucker. I paid this money for this thing. You've got this low pass filter where people are spending money actively for this thing to work. So they want it to work. They believe it is good already. You don't have any doubting Thomases putting down 50, or very few doubting Thomases putting down 10 or 15 grand to test something out as a beta. And then, you have all those things sort of combined. You're only going to get the hype. If Tesla said, all right, everyone with a Model 3 or a Model Y can now try full self-driving for free, I think you'd get a ton of people come out and say, this sucks. But they do a very good job of weeding those people who are critical thinkers out of this equation.
Yeah, no, I think it's a strong case. I mean, also they made their case for how full self-driving would be achieved for years, and they missed the target for years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I'm giving myself a pass. I believed in the approach. Mike Bernard believed in the approach like a decade ago when it was laid out as, okay, this is a better approach to full self-driving. I mean, I still think if you're wrong, you're wrong. So I was wrong, at least up to, what I expected of it. So, I was an idiot for believing that it was going to be achievable as quick, for just basically believing Elon Musk when he was like, it's going to be done this year or next year. Like,
I don't think that's a fair
I
statement. I
believed
don't.
in
I don't
him
think people are
because he
idiots
had been
because
right with everything else with Tesla, pretty much.
yeah. But that's exactly what I was going to say. Is I don't believe you're an idiot for that. I don't think anybody's an idiot for believing that. I think the people who
But
are idiots are the people. Yes, that's what I was
at
going to say.
this point, you have to recognize the evidence, and that's why it's, to me, I'll believe it when I see it instead of, oh, I believe it's going to happen. I
Yeah.
need to see more proof. I need to see that coast to coast, LA to New York City, full self-driving, no intervention drive, and then I will believe robotaxis from Tesla are coming.
But see,
As long
that's
as
so
I can't
funny
go
because
5 minutes without windshield wipers freaking out on me and
yeah,
phantom braking with it activated, I just can't believe what they're doing is going down the right path. But we'll find out. They say just more compute power, more data. I think more data is going to make it more difficult.
I
At
think
some
more
point.
data is going to make it a lot
So,
worse. And
so
it's funny that you say that coast to coast drive because I think that's going to be a lot easier than navigating the school
oh
drop off
yeah,
zone.
it's true. Yes.
Yeah,
No.
take my kid to school and bring my car back, parallel park it in front of my house on my street, and then we'll talk about robo taxis.
Exactly. Yeah. No. I get through the school zone with the flashing yellow lights, with the police car coming down the road. All these things, which I yeah, I think we're not there. So I have to go. I have another call, but we have a few interesting and fun stories that we'll punt to tomorrow. But yeah, that's it. So check in tomorrow to get your electric fix. Thank you, Joe.
All right, we'll see you.